Hello and welcome everybody to our postcard letter writing workshop with the Student Political Action Coalition. I'm Stacy Brennan, the Curator of Education for the Lehigh University Art Galleries. It is my pleasure today to introduce Ray Ukan, who is a rising senior majoring in marketing with minors in art history and apparel design. Ray has been working with the art galleries for a few years now as a student advisory committee member and a summer intern, as well as continuing intern this semester for the Doing Democracy exhibition. So he knows the exhibition well, is going to tell us a little bit about it today and how it connects with our workshop, where we have Sarah Boyd and Brian Lucas from the Student Political Action Coalition. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ray. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacy. Yeah, so my name is Ray Ukan. I'm a Lehigh class of 2021 senior right now. And my pronouns are he, him, his, or they, them, theirs. And so today, this is just like a breakdown of what we're doing right now. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the exhibition. So yeah, I guess I'll start out with the exhibition. So Lehigh University Art Galleries is right now having an exhibit called Doing Democracy. And I started out as a student advisory committee board member. And I also ended up taking a class last semester for spring 2020 called Doing Democracy. And in that class, students were actually part of the exhibit planning process. And my favorite part of that class was that we really got to take a look at the photos that were going to be in the exhibit. And really thinking about the themes that were going to be emphasized. And so a lot of the themes that we came up with were involving social movements and movements towards civil rights, social justice, and what it means to be an American, present day, as well as how we standing right now connect to the past of America. And so the Student Advisory Committee today is also being involved in the exhibit through a couple of committees, and we're really trying to increase the student engagement with this exhibit as well as the other exhibits that go on through Lehigh University Art Galleries. And what I did a little bit for this exhibit was that I created a bunch of art audio guide videos so that students can still interact with the exhibit outside of being on campus because of our current situation. And so these videos, you can find them on the art gallery's websites. If you're also on campus in Bethlehem, you can also access them on the Greenway, where there's like an outdoor exhibit featuring 20 photos from the collection, and each one has an audio guide as well that gives more context and some like prodding questions to really make a connection between what the photograph is representing, whether it's from the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, and how that can connect to what's going on today and how what we are right now, basically. And so I've been talking a lot about the exhibit, but not really about what it's about. So I'm just gonna go through what the exhibit, for me at least, represents, because I really feel like this is one of those exhibits that can really mean a number of things depending on the individual, just like how that's basically the American experience, right? So at least for me, Doing Democracy is an exhibit that primarily focuses on the different aspects of American life, focusing specifically on the several decades between the 1920s and the 1980s. And how different, the different facets of America, basically, and what that can look like. And for me, the most interesting part of this exhibit is that it doesn't just focus on the key events, because there are very important milestone events that are featured in this exhibit. So the background photo right here is actually is the protest against the Vietnam War in front of the US Capitol building. So that's obviously a really milestone event that's been happening, the Vietnam War, and also the civilian reaction to it. But there are also different photos in the exhibit that's almost featuring overlooked aspects of how people were engaging with life throughout history. And so that's what this exhibit really means to me, at least. The different cogs in this experience that we called the United States, the people living here, and how that again connects to where we are right now, and to see that continuation of history, and that to really understand that we're standing in a chapter of this large and messy history of what we call the United States. So this is just some photos of me. I'm like right there in the middle, kind of, you can see. But this is a photo from the spring 2020 class from last semester. And we're just taking a look at all these photos that were in the exhibit. And we were creating like clusters of photos that related to each other, what themes they could be conveying, and really talking it out. It was a really interactive class. So I really recommend people to also take any museum studies classes here, because I think it's a really different experience than the, I guess, traditional classroom experience. So this is a photo from the March on Washington during the Civil Rights Movement. There's a lot of photos from this period. And these are just some photos from like, I guess, blueprint photos of the physical exhibit. Unfortunately, visitors can't visit right now. But again, all these photos and like the audio guides are online. So there's definitely ways you can still interact. So yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier, the Greenway exhibit with photos. We had an opening reception. And yeah, and this is like the little QR code that is on each of the boards basically. And if you just scan it, you can listen to like a 1 or 2 minute clip that just kind of goes over the context of what's going on. Some more photos. And this, I think I like this example of an event that's like not really a one that's like recorded in history or like taught in history classes, but this is just a snapshot. Just like a little spiel, I guess. This photo was taken during a protest against segregation and basically racist workplace regulations. And this woman was confronting these white men who were basically attacking the protesters. And one of the men said to her, if you care about them so much, why don't you just marry one of them? And so after such a statement like that was said to her, she then just sided with the protesters and decided to protest along with them. So, and then we also have photos of historical figures. This is Representative John Lewis, who passed away this past summer. And yeah, I think a lot of these photos, really, if they were like colored, you almost can't really tell if it was taken today or like 40 years ago. So yeah. This is a photo of soldiers who were drafted for World War II. They're all lined up and getting ready to go to war, basically, and training. And this photo is really definitely packed with emotion, especially when it is contrasted with this next photo that I'm going to show, which is like all the graves of soldiers. And I think this is a good example of like a key takeaway I took from the class that I took last semester about how photos can really tell stories depending on how they're framed or what photos are put next to what, and that's what art curators think about, and what museums role is as an institution, as an educational institution, how we can get people to think about certain topics, certain themes through the power of art. And that's something that I'm really interested in. And so this is just an example of something that I was like, oh, wow, that's impactful. So yeah, I think that is, we're coming close to the last photos. So yeah. Yeah, basically that's just a overview. I hope I was like saying this articulately. I feel like I was jumping around a lot, but yeah, and if anyone has any questions about either the exhibit, how to get involved, or the student advisory committee, anyone is feel free to email me and reach out.
Thank you, Ray.
I have a question.
Sure.
Where did you get the photos from?
Oh, very,
Good
I should have
question.
mentioned this. Yeah, so the photos were given as a gift from George Stephanopoulos. He used to be a White House correspondent. And Stacy, do you have any more details? I know there was like a lot of photos.
Yeah, so over the course of 5 years, George Stephanopoulos donated to Lehigh over 2,000 photographs. And they span from like the 1920s to today. Obviously, you know, he's a real interest in kind of the political climate, but also broadcasting and media. So the photographs are really varied. And he is not an alum of Lehigh. He shares an art dealer with the university. So a lot of our acquisitions of art come through a specific guy that he also works with. But he has an interest in working with universities that use historical photos for academic research, which is why we were able to acquire them. So thank you for that.
Do students have access to like looking at the photos?
Yes, you do, definitely. So there are 107 photos that are exhibited in this exhibition. We're in the process of digitizing the collection that Lehigh has. Lehigh has close to 17,000 works of art in our collection. And so we've digitized almost 3,000 of them. You can view them on our website at www.luag.org. And if you go to the Doing Democracy exhibition on our website, you can view all the images that are in the exhibition. So thank you for asking that, Jasmine. And it's an ongoing exhibition and an ongoing dialogue. So we're really appreciative that you're all here today. And this is, you know, part of many workshops that we'll offer in conjunction with this through the end of the year. So with that, Brian and Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you because as Ray did a great job of kind of laying the historical context for and our inspiration for this exhibition, we really want to inspire the next generation of voters and the next generation of politicians to kind of take over, but also for all of you to kind of articulate the issues that are important to you and your community and to write to your local delegates to create change. So we are very lucky to have Sarah and Brian here to kind of lead us through what that process looks like and how you can go about doing that.
Thanks so much, Stacy. Brian, I'll go ahead and share my screen if that's cool with you.
Yeah, no, that's totally cool.
Sweet. Okay, do it.
While you're doing that, I'm gonna post some links in the chat that will help go along with the presentation.
All right. Let me make this big. Hold on. Okay, can everyone see that okay? Okay, sweet. Brian, jump in, interrupt me anytime you want. So my name's Sarah. I'm in the class of 2021. I'm a fully remote student this semester, so I'm coming at y'all from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I use she or they pronouns, doesn't really matter to me. And I'm gonna talk to us a little bit about what writing your elected officials looks like and some of the different methods you can use to make that happen. As well as some of the approaches you can use to get the best possible result, which usually is going to be either a response back or at least some sort of public acknowledgement that they've received what you've given to them. Oops. Next slide. Okay, so realistically speaking, coming from someone who's worked on a bunch of campaigns and who's worked in some offices, personal letters are always going to be prioritized over phone calls or voicemails or emails. Without question, staff in congressional offices or in state legislative offices or even in your school board, they're always going to pay more attention to a personally written letter. because that demonstrated level of engagement says to them, oh no, like if we don't acknowledge this, they'll be really loud. So realistically, you are almost always going to get a response if you write a personal letter and you give them a return address. It might just be like the copy and pasted standard policy that they send back to you, but you will almost always get a response. There are a couple of other reasons that it's worthwhile to write to your elected representatives. And before I kind of talk through some of these reasons, the big one that's touted is accountability. You know, writing to your elected officials is one of the best ways to guarantee that they're being held accountable to the people who elected them. What we're witnessing now is kind of proof that that is not exactly how accountability is working in politics right now. I think like it's fair to say that public opinion isn't really in line with what some elected officials are doing. So there is a sense of, you know, almost feudalness to sending a letter knowing that even though 60% of Americans believe this, you know, like that's not where the elected officials are going to fall in line. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before I kind of talk more about why it's worth it. And honestly, again, it's one of those things, elected officials and the people that work in their offices, they always pay attention to personally written letters. Another good reason to write them is because you might have personal anecdotal experience or information or evidence that they simply do not have yet, especially on the local level when you're looking at issues related to your school board, to your county commission, to your city council, to anything like that. Those personal anecdotal experiences make a huge difference in public policy. And when you're able to send some of that to those local leaders, you'd be surprised how receptive they can be. It's fairly easy. It's a great way to show your civic engagement. It's something that's really easy to get your friends to do. And it's something that's really fun to do as a group. And some of the other really big reasons, one, it's a great outlet to voice your criticism for any like positions or votes that someone has made. And you can be as scathing as you want. But another thing is you can be really positive. I think it's really easy right now looking at some of the decisions that our political leaders are making to feel like, you know, there's so much criticism already, like what is going to happen if I send a letter? And to that, I will say that there are a lot of local leaders, you know, on the local level, like again, school board, county commission, all the way up to like some of our most vocal members of Congress and Senate who are representing minority opinions against a majority that is, you know, not listening to public opinion. Right, so you have representatives like Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, who, if you've ever seen like pictures of the outside of her office, I mean, there are sticky notes covering it saying thank you. And that leads me into the point that sometimes one of the most rewarding ways you can engage is to write like a thank you note to someone who is making hard decisions in politics that you recognize like they're having a hard time doing this. And that extra voice of support is great, you know, like if a school board is trying to get a different budget approved and the county commission is, you know, not really budging, sending a thank you note to the school board member who's advocating for it, it can feel really good. So that's to say, like, there are two main types of letters. One is like, why did you vote this way? You should have known better. I'm your constituent and here's why you should do it this way next time. Or it can be like a, I really appreciate the work you're doing. Thanks. So starting a letter, it's really not that complicated. Really what you want to do is think about identifying the issue and the type of letter that you want to send. So just spend a couple minutes or a couple seconds thinking about something you care about, whether it's, you know, like for me, for example, I care a lot about healthcare and Medicare for all. And I also care a lot about, small business relief in COVID. Those are things that are important to me. So the process I would do to think about how to write that letter is I would identify those causes and I would think about what are some of those leaders that I voted for or I know represent me that have any sort of decision-making capacity on this issue. And where can I best direct my voice to potentially result in the biggest change? So for example, Here we have just a big list of issues that you might encounter or think about or want to learn more about. But if I were to write a letter about small business relief, I might want to reach out to the city of Chattanooga and ask them what kind of city grants or what kind of federal funds have been directed to our county or to our city to help small business. Because while I could easily write a letter to like my congressman, Chuck Fleischman, the reality is he's a congressman and he's probably going to pay a lot less attention to the city concerns than would like the mayor or the city council. So really it's just, you kind of have to think about where to put the puzzle pieces. Because there is, again, like I said, there's a real significant chance that your personal letter can make a difference. So yeah, so just weighing where they should go. And some of the things that I kind of use to just jumpstart what I want to write about, start thinking about like, what are some of the positions that you're aware of that some of your senators or congresspeople or even like state legislators or state senators, what are some of the things that they've said about the confirmation hearings of Amy Coney Barrett? Do you agree with some of their statements? Do you disagree with them? And you know, how would you want to voice either your approval or disapproval for the way they're handling that? You can think too, if you're going back to your local level, because really local government is where all this power is. The federal government is really ineffective in this kind of thing. Think about, you know, like your local police department, think about your city council, think about your city commissioners. How have they reacted to the demands of the Black Lives Matter movement? Have they made any sort of commitments to answering some of the demands of activists, or have they kind of stepped back? And thinking about what you would like them to do, how would you pitch that? You know, like if your city council has been really good at not answering questions about redirecting police funds to like community programs, think about like how could I phrase it in a way that would direct them to do that? And how could I really show that this is a priority that they should have? When you use your voice as a constituent, it's hard to ignore. So just some other things like thinking about small business, public schools, like these are all channels to get to who you want to talk to. And like some of the technical nitty gritty stuff, it's really not, it's not that bad. You kind of want to stick kind of like a cover letter or a resume. Less than one full page is usually like the perfect length, because anything more than a page, it's not going to get read. And it's probably just going to get thrown away. If you don't have your return address on it, like if you don't have a return address for them to send something back, they're not going to read it. It's going to go in the trash. 10 times out of 10, when you don't have that address, they can't verify that you're actually a constituent. So they don't pay attention to it. You can totally send a letter to someone who's like outside of your district and they'll still read it and respond. But if you don't put a return address, they won't even look at it. A big thing, like I said earlier, is use personal anecdotes. Use some of the encounters and experiences that you've had to help shape the question or the pitch or the demand that you're making of these elected leaders. And really like show them that this matters to you and that you as a voter, it matters enough to where it could potentially sway your vote on this person. And then one last thing, you kind of want to stick to one issue in every letter. It's the best way, one, to guarantee a response, but it's also the best way to make sure that whoever is reading it is really getting the most out of it to pass along to more senior staff. Most of the times the people in offices of elected officials that are reading these letters are staff assistants, and they're getting thousands of these. They're getting so many. So if you can make a really clear and concise case for the one issue that you're writing about, they will remember that. You want to treat it like a formal letter, right? You want to, dear whoever, you can address it to the elected official. If you can find the name of like the desk administrators in these offices online, you can address it to them. And then again, if you just want to stick to like 3 or so paragraphs, less than a page, you want to go into why you think the way you do. You know, like I am a constituent, I am bringing this to your attention, right? You lead into your topic, almost like those 3 paragraphs or 5 paragraph essays from high school. You want to hook them in, share your experience, you know, let them know where you're coming from, what is the context that's making you feel the way that you do. And then tell them how you want their behavior to reflect what you've told them. right? One of the most important things in these, if you're not just writing like a thank you letter, is to give a pretty clear policy directive or a really clear idea. Like, I don't approve of your vote on HBO 4. You should have voted this way. And the next time this bill comes up in committee, you should vote this way. Really, all you want to do is focus on being direct, concise, and really, really clear. Because that's how you can guarantee that they'll listen. And like I said too, sometimes this is hit or miss. Like, you might not get a response and it might feel like it's pointless, especially, like I said, with so many elected leaders just kind of ignoring the way that the public is feeling. But it is a good way to channel some of that engagement energy that you might have. And it is rewarding too once you get that response on like the official letterhead resume paper from that office. It establishes a pretty good connection too. Once you've sent one of those letters, they have you on file, like they will know. So when you contact again, they'll know that you're an active constituent and they'll pay more attention. I guess the last things I would think of here are, there's nothing that you really can't say in these if you ever want to write to an elected official. Obviously, like the FBI has like a threshold of like what you can't say. But you totally, I mean, if you just want to rage on someone for a really crappy vote, like you're within your rights to do that. And even if you just want to send a letter that's like, hey, city councilor, I really loved the way that you shut down that heckler. You know what I mean? Those are some of the really easy ways to develop connections with your elected leaders that can eventually potentially result in, you know, your voice carrying like a little bit more weight and feeling like you have just that much more control over the civic process. I can't really think of anything else. Brian, did I miss anything or anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess I was just going to add some of my own personal experience with it. When I was in high school, my English teacher actually got me into doing this. She had us at the time, Obama was still president, so we all wrote to Obama a series of letters just either saying, you know, thank you or taking issues. You know, there was really no agenda. She just wanted to kind of tell us that our voice mattered and that the way that we use our words are important. And so we actually, every single one of us got a response from the White House. Obviously it wasn't written from Obama personally, but I mean, it had his assistants and whoever was interning in the office had taken the time to send us stuff back. I just wrote Donald Trump a get well soon card for catching COVID, which, you know, read into that, don't read into that, but, you know, I'm expecting a response soon. And then I think it was a year ago when a student brought a gun to Lehigh campus, we wrote to some of our elected representatives. And one of the thing I think that had the biggest impact on us talking about gun rights and gun legislation was the fact that I could actually bring up the anecdote of somebody on my college campus brought a gun there and I was, you know, so many hundreds of feet away from it and I didn't even know. And that this guy, you know, in Pennsylvania where it has some of the strictest gun laws, you know, that the person still had access to it and there was no real background check, et cetera. So I think, yeah, I guess just to add on the importance of personal anecdotes, I think that really made it a much better letter than if I hadn't included that, or if I was just, you know, complaining versus like really saying how it affected me and how you should craft your policy around my life, my experiences, et cetera.
Yeah, really the only thing I have to add to that, Brian, is that one of the great things about communicating with your elected officials, whether it's in like personal letters like this, leaving a voicemail, sending an email, whatever, learning how to vocalize your experience as it relates to the political positions that this elected official is taking is a really important skill if you want to have even like a bare minimum level engagement in politics or political decision making. Learning how to articulate how your needs as a citizen or as just a person living in the district or in the state or in the country aren't being met as a result of this person's position and as a result of this person's policy. Those are just great skills for political communication. And it's transferable too. I mean, learning how to write a one-page, concise, argumentative, you should think this way and here's why. It's just a great writing skill in general. And because so much in politics is written, so many like position papers and public statements, everything is written out. Learning how to be comfortable with that is a really good way to just segue into more formalized engagement. Something I didn't mention too is obviously like it's a letter, like you can physically mail it, you know, like get the envelope, get the stamp, put the address, send it in the mail. It's, you know, it's great. You can fax or you can scan it too. But yeah, like honestly, the hardest part is getting started. The hardest part is identifying what do you want to talk about and who you want to send it to. Once you have gotten that, the rest is just, it comes like this. And yeah, that's all I really had for that.
Yeah, and I think one just last thing to add too is I think you had mentioned it earlier, but just I guess to reiterate that elected officials have to craft their policy around something. You know, ideally they should be crafting their policy ideas around what their constituents think, you know, so I think like the biggest misconception is that, oh, like no one actually reads it, and, you know, no one, you know, that our opinion isn't relevant to them. And it's like, well, if they have your vote and, you know, you live in an area that they're overseeing, they absolutely have to, and they will read it and at least take the input. They might not always agree with the input, but I mean, they definitely have to take it into consideration if they get 30, 40 letters, you know, going against what they were going to do initially. So yeah.
Well, let me ask the two of you. So you've written to a delegate and you do get, oh yeah, this dog. And you do get a response. How often do you think you should follow up, or should you follow up? Like, you know, say their policy, what, you know, this letter resulted in some policy change, or you've seen them change their kind of stance on that. Would you suggest following up with them?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the kind of weird things about the American political system is we feel a very like formal difference between elected officials and just the regular public. The reality is there's not a difference. The people who are elected to fill these positions are just like the rest of us, except they won an election. So just like you would have a conversation with a friend if they changed their mind on something that you convinced them of, and you would be like, oh, okay, so I convinced you of this. And actually that same logic applies here. Have you considered that? Think of it as a dialogue. The people who are elected to represent us, their job is to represent us, and they can't do that if they don't know what we think. So absolutely keep engaging, like annoy them with how many letters and emails and voicemails you send. That's the whole point. So yeah, definitely respond.
Great. Thank you. That's a really helpful presentation. We did, we created a little like postcard template from the galleries that people can use to kind of advocate for, you know, a specific issue or a cause. But one of the things I didn't think about was including a space for your return address. I didn't realize that that was something that is a requirement for them to actually read. So that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and also too, for anybody watching this who lives in the Lehigh area, my mailbox does not have one of those little flags where you can get like my mail actually picked up. So I tend to go to the alumni building where they actually have a physical mailbox there. I find it easier than going to the mail center. So just a suggestion for anybody who might have difficulty actually being able to send mail from their house, too, is something I've done.
And do you feel physical letters are kind of make a bigger impact than an email, right? Because an email is easier to delete. Yeah.
100% they do. The physical letters that get sent to these offices like get their own pile. You know what I mean? If someone has gone to the thought of sending a postmarked letter, The office will usually engage with it that much more just because they're aware like, oh, this is an engaged citizen, and if they wrote us, they probably won't stop until they hear back. So that's kind of where they are with responding to constituents. So definitely, yeah, sending a physical letter almost always guarantees a response, almost always.
That's great. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or thoughts about this workshop, or just the process of contacting delegates or issues or things like that?
Also in the chat, I posted some resources that we have. One of them is a sort of quick guide to like who to write to about what issue that you might have, or like if, you know, state versus local level versus federal level stuff, that it can kind of give you an indication about who to write to. And then there's also, at least for the Northampton County area, I have a list of contacts for local offices and you know, the governor, the representative, the state representative, etc. So feel free to download that and just always have it in case, you know, the need arises to write to them. So.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one other thing. So we, Skidmore College had an exhibition called Give a Damn. And it was an exhibition around a specific artist's work that was political, and they had a number of workshops about letter writing, and they created this great resource which we wanted to share because it gives you kind of specific issues, topics you might consider around those issues, and who would be the local delegate or state or federal delegate that you would want to reach out to about these issues. So this is a great resource. There is a link on our website, and you can also find it on the Skidmore Tang. It's called the Tang Museum. But just, you know, really kind of well done and simple, so that it gets right to the point for what might be important to you. And I'm going through very quickly, so please make sure you kind of look at it yourself as well. So I guess we're nearing the end of our time here. I'm grateful to Sarah from tuning in all the way from Tennessee, and Brian and Ray tuning in from Bethlehem, and Jasmine and Nande. Thank you for joining us for the workshop today. We have so many great resources on the Lehigh University Art Gallery website, and lots of opportunities to kind of get involved in democracy. Obviously, the next 20 days are going to be pretty intense, and now is a great time to write to your local delegates and to really advocate for the issues that are important to you. So I hope that you will do so, and I thank you for your time today. Anyone have any closing thoughts or questions?
I mean, besides go vote,
Yeah.
if you're watching this, like go vote and then do more, because voting is, I mean, as we can see, it's not gonna be the, what's the word? The most accessible option for a lot of people based on some suppressive tactics by some political party.
And
So,
if you're registered to vote, try registering 2 people who are not registered to vote. I think is a good and a very easy number to reach, and I think that's something that we should do if you haven't done that yet. So I'm hoping that we can get more people registered and getting out to vote that way. So.
Definitely a good point. And even beyond the election, it is more important than ever to be engaged in civic issues and to be an active kind of advocate for the things that are important to you. So I think this is a great resource that we can continue to use beyond the elections and hopefully into the future. So thank you all so much for joining us today.
thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. See you all later. Thanks.